So you were saying earlier today that you're really comfortable with where you are.
I am, very much
now.
so.
What did it take you to get there?
Pain. You know, I have a Bible school that I started 12 years ago. It only went 2 years. I graduated about 266 students. You know, over the years, I've had 6 or 7 Bible schools, ordained close to 400, 500 students to become preachers. That's a pretty good accomplishment, you know. A lot of bishops, 40 churches or more. Out of all the lessons I taught those people in 2 years, and there were at least 4 a week, the only one anyone refers to is not homiletics, not hermeneutics, not conduct yourself in another man's pulpit, because it's all for preachers, it's all preachers. Right. None of those messages are remembered. Releasing your atmosphere, all kinds of things, you know, how to be invited back every time, you know, how to romance an audience, all the stuff that they won't teach you in seminary that I was imparting to these hundreds of students. The only one anyone ever refers to is the one entitled Preaching Through Pain. Preaching through pain. To this day, if you go up and say, what do you remember about the Young Preachers Institute, they'll say, preaching through pain. And, you know, we have adages, you know, pain, where there's no pain, no gain. I don't even use rhyme. Man, listen, I'm tired of New Year's Eve with another rhyme for the upcoming year. Most of the time it doesn't happen.
Right.
2014, it won't be obscene. 2015, you're going to learn how to do the gangster lean. Whatever, man. Just, God doesn't rhyme that much. That's you. I understand people relate to it, but just get off of it, man. 2013 in the Bible means nothing.
You know what's amazing?
You know it means something? It means walking with God every day, whether it's 2013.
But can you imagine getting up doing a watch night service, you get up every while and say, I just want to let you know, next year ain't going to be any different than the year before. At all, because you're the same.
You're the same.
And will you preach that kind of honesty?
That's the difference. Honesty.
Yeah.
You know, you don't air dirty laundry.
Right.
That's not honesty. That's stupidity.
Yeah.
Some things you confess your sins to God. You confess your faults to men.
Yeah.
Well, let's start doing that then, preacher.
Yeah.
Confess one fault.
Right.
And ask for prayer. You might be surprised. They may actually confess theirs. And then you actually have a place that's not just a church where you play and fake it to make it. And you actually, I told them, listen, let me put it like this. I was doing a big prophetic conference the other day, major conference, a lot of churches on the East Coast. I'm going to go into the name of it. And I was speaking to all the leaders initially. No script. Pastor said he wanted them just to ask me questions. They never got to ask questions. I started talking. And I made a statement that, to me, it's life-changing, but it's not original. I got it from a guy who had a tremendous fall in the ministry. He was married, was doing well, he's pastoring in New York. He got a girl pregnant in the church. I mean, this is the absolute worst. This is like, doesn't get any worse than that, okay? He loses his church. He winds up down south. Long and short of it, after a period of 15 years or more, he's back in the ministry. Not saying it would take that long, but, you know. In the interim, what he did was become a very successful businessman to the point of becoming a millionaire. I lost contact with him, was reconnected a couple years ago. He made a statement I'll never forget, and this is what I repeated to them. He said, you know what, Bishop? He said, I'm back in ministry now. He said, I know I made tremendous mistakes, errors, sins, whatever. He said, but I don't try to practice what I preach. He said, I preach what I practice.
That's the way to do it.
Now, I said all that to make the point. He said, I preach what I practice. So if you don't practice it, don't preach it.
Right.
Don't keep me trying to get up here, because that's not word made flesh in your life. There's no impartation. You're just preaching letter.
Yeah.
Jesus said, "My words are spirit and life." You know what? Because they're true in my life. So that's why I'm happy now, because I don't try to practice what I preach. I preach what I practice.
Right.
So if I don't practice, I don't preach it.
Yeah.
Not that God's word goes up and down based on my ability, but you understand my point.
Well, it keeps us from being hypocrites. You know, if we can do that. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel you.
I think it'd be pretty scary for a lot of pastors out there if they had to say from the pulpit, somebody, you know, some said, what would you consider your biggest fault? You know, if they were to be honest. Because the first two things that go through their head are, people going to leave, people ain't going to give any money, we're not going to be able to pay the light bill. Fact of the matter is, people might actually relate, and people might actually come.
Here's a preacher answer to that question. What is your biggest fault? My biggest fault is I love people too much.
Oh, it's. I'm just too humble. God has just put a spirit of humility on me. And
What's my biggest fault? Ask me that, since I'm a pastor in operation right now. What is my biggest fault? My biggest fault is that I love being on TV too much. I don't know, man. Maybe pork chops and greens and macaroni and cheese.
God made me too good looking.
But if I did have one, I ain't gonna tell all of y'all. That's years ago. Remember when Jim Baker fell back in the 90s? Powerful story. Ted Koppel was interviewing
late 80s.
a group of preachers on his late night show. I remember it being D. James Kennedy, Jerry Falwell, among a couple other notable ones.
I think Jimmy Swaggart was one.
No, Swagger wasn't on this one.
Okay.
D.V. Hill, or he might have been. He might have been. You may be correct. I don't recall, because that was before Swaggart fell. But all these preachers were on there, and the late D.V. Hill. And they would say, well, what do you think should have been done to Jim Baker for what happened to him? You know, because for those who don't know, he fell in sin with a girl and paid some money to keep her quiet, and got exposed, and he wound up losing his ministry. Turned it over to someone to manage it in the meantime, thinking he would get it back, and they didn't get it back. So they sort of like operated on false pretenses. The argument was whether or not he should even gotten it back, but that's neither here nor there. So they were asking the question. Ted Koppel, you know, being the journalist he is, he says, all of you are reverends, all of you are preachers of the gospel. Let me ask you, what should have been done to Jim Baker? And if you had been Jim Baker, what would you have done? And so they went around to different ones. Jerry Falwell. I mean, it's so many years I can't quote them, but he was like, well, I'd leave ministry permanently. I would be unworthy of my vocation, and very, very, very righteous answer. I'm not making a commentary about the dead. Then D. James Kennedy comes and said, I would have submitted myself to the board of elders, and he goes to the whole thing of church discipline, and good answer. And they go to the rest, and every one of them have an answer. Well, they get to E.B. Hill. And so, Reverend Hill, what would you have done? And he said, well, I can't tell you exactly what I would have done. But if I had fallen in sin with Mrs. Hahn and had paid some money, I know one thing I wouldn't have done. I wouldn't have told none of y'all. Man, he said, I wouldn't have told none of y'all because the last person told it didn't work out too well for him.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Oh, man, he bust up the whole audience, man. Ted Koppel even laughed. He said, I wouldn't have told none of y'all, so if I mess up, I ain't telling none of y'all.
Man, E.B. Hill had some
that was
wisdom.
Real.
Yeah. Yeah, no joke.
But see, he wasn't scared, man. That kind of answer means you're not scared.
Right.
That's how I am now. That's what people don't know where I'm coming from. I'm not scared. I almost pick a fight. I want you to fight.
Yep.
And then when it looks like I'm getting ready to smash you, then I heal you.
Now it's just a memory.
I just got an insight that came to me that's very important to mention for balance sake. As relates to leaders and showing and exposing things, that kind of thing, confessing faults. Here's a balance on it. There's a story in the Bible where the enemy was coming. It was obvious that the nation was going to go down. And what they did in those days, in mourning, they would tear their garments. Well, the king tore his garments. But if the people see you have torn garments and the enemy's coming, they're going to lose all hope. Because they pretty much know that's a sign of concession. He put on garments over top of it so that towards God, God could see it. But the people couldn't see it. But the reality is they saw that his garment was torn underneath. Somehow it uncovered. And they lost heart. If a minister shows his undergarments to people struggling in their own situation, they lose hope. They lose hope. So the best time to make confession is not when you're struggling with anything, but when you've overcome it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you can tell me from experience. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
So that's, to me, is the balance. Is how it can help you also on a personal level. It's not start preaching to you and really preaching to myself.
It would seem like leaders should be able to confess to other leaders. But when you go back to, like you talked about Jim Baker earlier, the people he submitted to took his ministry from.
Mm-hmm.
So my God.
Like E.B. Hill said, I'm not telling none of y'all.
Exactly.
But, I think everybody needs at least one person that is a safe place that they can go to you know, because it would be, you know, very difficult for a pastor to go to their congregation, you know, but there's got to be somebody laterally.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I always, the principle, though, and I'm sure you agree with me, Chris, is that you don't counsel down, you counsel up.
Right, right, yeah, because I'm in need.
Yeah.
I'm in need of something. So I need.
Why would you ask a poor man
for
secrets on making money? Please. I'm talking to you about it for, you know, seriously.
Well, people can only get to know who you present yourself as. And if you present yourself honestly and you present your heart, you know, and if you allow yourself to be vulnerable, it's amazing the results that can come out of that can be wonderful.
Yeah.
And it can hurt too.
And you know, one of the things is most people cannot.
A lot better.
Most people cannot relate to your successes, but they can relate to your failures because they've had them. Everybody hadn't been on your on your level of success.
Right.
One of the greatest messages I've ever heard. You were there. It's where it all started. It was Bishop Jakes behind closed doors.
Behind closed doors.
Show me your wounds. We don't need Superman. We need Clark Kent.
Let's go into that for a moment. All right, we're all ministers in different ways. We do what we do. Why are we afraid to show our wounds? I mean, it's easier said than done, you know. I mean, we could actually make an argument for not showing your wounds. Yeah. Because we've done that before, and somebody stuck their hand in it, and they didn't appreciate the fact it was a wound. They actually tried to make it a bigger wound. Mm-hmm. We had that happen, haven't we? We confessed to the wrong person.
Right.
And I mean, and you know, we've done that and had people react crazy on us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or think, this is going to sound contradictory, but think we're on the same level and we're not. Because the price we paid for what we have is enormous. And they don't have anything close to it in the spirit realm or even in the natural sometimes.
Right.
And so you can't appreciate what I've been through. That when I stand up in that pulpit and quote scripture and quote ad infinitum, that came from 6 to 8 hours of me studying every day for 30 years while you watching Joe's Blow TV.
Yeah.
So if I have a fault in the process, you forget all about my consecration or what brought me to this place.
Right.
I didn't wake up one day knowing what I know. So they play it down, and so therefore we sometimes hold back on it. You know, and don't tell them. I don't think that it's necessary. I mean, you preach the gospel, not your life. You feel me? If it's too much testimony, it's out of balance.
Yeah, right.
So you have to have the proper balance between confession and it ain't none of your business.
Right.
Can I get a witness up in here?
Yeah.
It ain't none of your business. Yeah. Now, Pastor, tell me some of your struggles. Not on your life.
Right. Right.
You know, you heard the story. Everybody's heard the joke about the 3 preachers or the 3 different denominational people that were represented on the boat. You've heard that about the Catholic and the Methodist and the Pentecostal?
No.
Well, it's a simple story.
Tell me everywhere you go.
Well, I mean, it just comes to mind. I mean, they're on there confessing their faults, and so the Pentecostal says when he has a problem, sometimes he looks at a little girly magazine and he doesn't want to, but he does. He's asking for their prayers, and the other guy says, "Well, yeah, I have a little problem, man, and every now and then I hate to say it, but every now and then I just don't do right by my money and don't pay my tithe, and I don't, and I collect the offering in the church, and sometimes I put my hand in paying a couple times." And the other guy, the Catholic, says, "Oh, wow." He says, wow. Well, I confess that I got a problem with not being able to keep a secret, and I can't wait to get off this boat.
That's funny.
I can't wait to get off this boat.
On the next episode of Smoke Break.
I am a phenom, okay? Because I am a walking, resurrected man. I posted a picture on Facebook and they criticized the fact, "Why you got so many pictures?" I said, because for 9 years I didn't post one. So allow me a month to celebrate that I'm no longer dead.
Yeah.
Right.
Because if you say I'm dead, this is what a dead man looks like. And I am dead. I'm dead to me. I don't care what you think. You can talk about me. You can't take my church. You can't take my ministry. You can't take my marriage. You can't take anything. I lost a lot of things. But I'm back now. But I'm back now loving, man. And I like me better.